cross over the river where they feel safe and sound. And they don't need no friends as long as they gaze on Waterloo sunset. They are in paradise.
You could think of yourself driving in a mountainous area with the road circling up the mountain, driving without any headlights, cliffs that you're at risk of falling over. You want, of course, to turn on the headlights, and that is what science tries to do all the time, to give us the headlights so we can see what risks we're facing.
Recent discoveries made by scientists studying the ways in which our planet works are surely of the greatest importance for all of us. If they could define our planet's boundaries, could they also give us the roadmap to guide us out of our current crisis?
What are the systems that determine the state of the planet?
Those systems have held the planet in its stable state throughout the Holocene. As we increase our pressures on Earth, there is a danger that those systems will start to break down, that we will break through Earth's boundaries, causing the stability that we depend on to collapse. With global temperatures now warmer than they've been since the dawn of civilization, there is a danger that we have already crossed the boundary in Earth's climate.
Greenland is already beyond its threshold, where it's now losing 10,000 cubic meters of ice per second. That loss rate will only continue as the climate heats up. So is Greenland lost? Evidently it is.
When we cross tipping points, we unleash irreversible changes. You cannot stop it.
You can think of this in terms of dominoes. If you tip one of them over, then this might lead to a cascading effect.
Are we concerned about fighting the climate crisis? Are we concerned about keeping the carbon in the forests? Or I don't care?
Nature is being degraded at a rate and a scale that is unprecedented.
In just 50 years, humanity has wiped out 68% of global wildlife populations. A single boundary for the loss of nature may be hard to pinpoint because of nature's complexity. But one thing is clear, we've already crossed well beyond it. Our overuse of phosphorus and nitrogen is one of the least known but most critical impacts we're having on the biosphere.
As soon as you have a eutrophication problem, the lake sort of says, oh good, we're going to make it worse.
Over the past few decades, the world's ocean has become 26% more acidic. Air pollution takes on average 3 years off the life expectancy of each one of us.
Just based on the 7.5 million deaths by these particles, I would say we have already crossed the boundary as far as aerosols are concerned.
In 2020, Australia endured a summer from hell.
There's no sign of any wildlife at all. There's nothing left here. I think this is a wake-up call. These summer fires really showed us that it's affecting us today, and this is going to have long-lasting consequences.
The appearance of COVID-19 was a clear warning that all is not well with our planet. But it's also given us an opportunity to rebuild in a new direction. An immediate priority is to reduce carbon emissions to zero and stabilize global temperature as low as we possibly can. But zero emissions are not enough. We must also draw down carbon, and there's one very effective way to do this.
suñu liggéey yëpp c'est de faire en sorte que fépp fu garab mën a sax ñu saxal ko fa.
There's another transformation that is almost unbelievably simple.
Quite exciting that eating healthy food might be the single most important way of contributing to save the planet. The future is not determined. The future is in our hands. What happens over the next centuries will be determined of how we play our cards this decade.
It's a remarkable time to be alive, but it also carries great responsibility to act decisively, to ensure that our planet forever remains healthy and resilient. The perfect home.
Bienvenido, selamat datang, bienvenue, host Yelden, willkommen, and Huanying. Welcome to the very first Nobel Prize Summit. Okay, that probably tested the limits of my language skills, and I suspect I only managed to cover just a small number of the languages spoken by our attendees today. We are so pleased to welcome a truly global audience to the summit. Whew. And that breathtaking piece from David Attenborough's new documentary, Breaking Boundaries, The Science of Our Planet, was truly a beautiful way to kick us off. My name is Christiana Mertens, and I will be your main stage guide for the next 2 days, helping you navigate the virtual platform, introducing our speakers and presenters, popping in to remind you of where and when you need to be, and simply making your experience easy and straightforward. When our host institutions, the Nobel Foundation, the U.S. National Academy of Sciences, the Potsdam Institute for Climate Impact Research, and the Stockholm Resilience Center began planning the summit 2 years ago, the idea was to gather at the National Academy of Sciences building in Washington, D.C., in their incredible Fred Kovli Auditorium. However, because of the pandemic, I'm coming to you from the Academy's West Coast home, their beautiful Beckman Center, a little rainy, here in Irvine, California. And this feels like the right place to be for the most important conversation of our time, and one that fans out far and wide. I am honored to open the doors and welcome all of you from around the globe. Okay, a few notes of housekeeping before we get started. The lobby will function as, well, a lobby. The main entry, the central gathering spot that leads you to all the places you want to go. Just go there when you want to orient yourself. From there, you can review the program, join networking sessions, poke around the Exploration Hub to watch some videos, or link out to some of the super interesting websites we've put together for you, and to learn more. This is a 3-day summit that also includes academic science sessions tomorrow and Wednesday, and solution sessions only on Wednesday. You'll find links to those sessions, wait for it, in the lobby. All of the main stage action happens here on this stage today and tomorrow. It's organized into 3 sessions, 2 today and 1 tomorrow, and focuses on 3 key themes: climate change and biodiversity loss, reducing inequality, technologies with the power to transform the way we live and work. And there are some exciting highlights I'd like to share with you. The first is President Biden's special climate envoy, John Kerry, who is making a special appearance later today, just off the heels of last week's climate summit. The second is a live performance happening tomorrow of the Greek tragedy Oedipus the King, featuring a star-studded cast which includes Jeffrey Wright and Frances McDormand, who just won an Oscar last night. Congratulations, Frances! On top of having these stars, this cast features Nobel laureates. How amazing is that? Bringing together scientists and actors in a powerful conversation about our future. Don't miss out on this great opportunity that is happening only live tomorrow. Visit the schedule to learn how you can watch. The third thing is day 3. This is the Solutions Day, and it is action-packed. We will deal with everything from the misinformation crisis to new economic thinking. Find a session you like and sign up for it by following the links on the Program tab. And just so you know, we are recording this entire summit. You'll be able to find links to the main stage content, what you're seeing here, in the lobby of at the end of each session. And the academic science sessions and the solution sessions will also be recorded, and in a week or so, you'll be able to find every single video, including the main stage videos on the Nobel Prize website. But that's for later, because we're focused on now, here, today. Today, we want you to remember to share your own thoughts and insights on your social channels, because we want to hear from you. So the hashtag for the summit is #NobelPrizeSummit. So jump on your social channels, start the conversation, and make your voice heard. Be open, be honest, because we are listening. Because remember, it is our collective response that creates change. You are a critical part of the solution, and we want you to be an active part of the conversation. So now that we have that out of the way, it's time to begin our summit. I am so proud and enthusiastic to introduce our presenting hosts, the leaders of the institutions who have convened this global summit, each of whom is passionately committed to putting the world on a path to a more sustainable, more equitable and inclusive, and prosperous future for all of humanity. Vidar Helgensen, Executive Director of the Nobel Foundation, Marcia McNutt, President of the U.S. National Academy of Sciences, and Johan Rockström, Director of the Potsdam Institute for Climate Impact Research. Take it away.
I am delighted to welcome you to the first ever Nobel Prize Summit. This is the beginning of 3 days of discussion and engagement. We will bring together the sciences and the arts, business and policy, the young and the old. We'll hear from a large number of Nobel laureates. We'll hear from other leading experts in their fields, and we're going to hear the voice of youth and the political leaders answerable to them. And we'll have music and art and even a Greek tragedy, as we heard. Actually, never has so many Nobel laureates met such a big global audience to address our biggest global challenges. And this is in keeping with Alfred Nobel's legacy. Alfred Nobel was an internationalist, and he was that at a time when nationalism was more in vogue than internationalism. He was concerned with the major challenges of his time, and he decided to celebrate those who dedicate their lives to scientific and human progress. And today, more than ever, we need leading minds from across a range of disciplines to come together to address very urgent and very complex challenges that our planet is facing. Challenges that our very human existence is facing. And we need those leading minds to engage with policymakers, those who make critical decisions for our future. That's why we are here. We want this summit to be a platform for critical thinking, critical discussion, and triggering critical action for planet and humanity. And when I say we, I'm really speaking of a unique partnership. And that's why I am privileged and pleased to give the word on to Marcia McNutt, President of the National Academy of Sciences.
Thank you, Vidar. This summit could not be more timely. In the past 18 months, science has put in the spotlight like never before. The pandemic required massive mobilization of scientific resources, of international cooperation, and new cures, new treatments on an unprecedented scale. Clearly, as we can see from the situation unfolding in India, there is still much to be done. but we can celebrate the successes as well. From public health recommendations that mitigated the spread of the disease, to therapies that helped reduce the death toll, to the unprecedented rate at which the new vaccines were developed. Health professionals and scientists are making a difference. But now I urge that we bring this same sense of urgency to the coupled problems of climate change and inequality as this summit explores humanity's most pressing challenges. Can we reduce inequities to safeguard the long-term potential of all of humanity? And can we rapidly become effective stewards of Earth's climate and biosphere, the ultimate global commons? Now, the three of us are here because we bring our own institution's strengths to this summit. The Nobel Foundation is world-renowned for its recognition of science excellence. Everyone knows of the Nobel Prizes, even if you're not a scientist, and what they stand for. Partnering with Nobel on this summit engages the laureates in these issues and amplifies our message, broadening its reach. Nobel is one of the world's most unique and valuable brands. On the other hand, my own institution, the National Academy of Sciences, brings convening power. We stand for the integrity of science and the scientific process. We have been likened to a Supreme Court for science, because whenever there are conflicting opinions on what does the science say, everyone turns to the National Academy to decide. We help connect science to society by informing better public policy and by communicating useful scientific information to the public in lay language. In a world where misinformation propagates like an epidemic, the National Academy of Sciences is the trusted purveyor of accurate information. And we are also so pleased to be partnering with the Potsdam Institute for Climate Impact Research and the Stockholm Resilience Center, Beeger Institute. These internationally renowned research institutions have taken on the coupled problems of climate instability, resilience, and sustainability as grand challenges. They bring together international cohorts of leading researchers across the natural and social sciences. Their scientists are part of a global network of researchers addressing these problems and contributing actively to important global syntheses, such as the IPCC. Together, our four institutions are pleased to bring you this first ever Nobel Summit, Our Planet, Our Future. I next turn to opening remarks from Johan Rockström, who is representing both Potsdam and Stockholm. Johan, we're eager to hear from you about the current challenges, implications for the future, and why this is the decisive decade for humanity.
Yeah, thanks, Marcia. Well, it's obvious that here we're gathering as the scientific institution standing on the evidence we have for action. The youth of today say listen to science and act accordingly. And here at the summit, we have, as pointed out by Vidar and Marcia, the world's leading scientists, Nobel laureates, experts to explore three themes critical for our future on Earth. Theme 1, on solving the climate crisis and the nature crisis through science-based mitigation and resilience. The second theme on sustainable pathways to reduce inequalities and global systemic risks when environmental change collides with human health risks. And the third theme on harnessing the power of science, technology, innovation to unleash societal transformations. So why these themes? Well, the world is, as we all know, going through one of its greatest tests over the last 18 months. But in the next decade, we face something even more profound: the need to act decisively on the other two global crises, the destruction of nature and global warming, that just like the pandemic have now reached a state of planetary emergency. We can no longer act incrementally. We need to act exponentially. We need to act collectively, and we need to act in parallel. This is a systemic transformation of societies, and the biggest lift has to be done in the next 10 years. The world has to cut global emissions by half to have a chance, of landing the world in a net zero world economy by 2050. But this will not be sufficient. We also need to revitalize Earth resilience, secure the health of our planet. Otherwise, we miss both the Paris targets and the United Nations Sustainable Development Goals targets. We face a biodiversity crisis. We've lost 68% of wildlife populations on Earth since 1970 in less than a lifetime, in my lifetime. We're slicing, dicing, and simplifying Earth's biosphere. We're systematically stripping out resilience. This has to end. That's the scientific message. And those who have done least to undermine Earth are hit hardest. Just like the COVID crisis, this is also a crisis of inequality. And finally, the fourth industrial revolution is underway and accelerating. It promises to change everything: health, jobs, society, culture, the environment. But it is still not clear if on aggregate this revolution supports societal goals, addressing inequality and climate change, for example, or make these goals even harder to achieve. A grand challenge for science is to make the digital revolution operate within the boundaries of a stable and resilient planet. And the window for a safe landing of the Earth is just barely open. Given these challenges, if you ask me, am I an optimist about the future? I say, despite the dire diagnostics, yes. This is a transformative decade. We are a resilient species, an innovative species. Cooperation is our superpower, and this is a super year for cooperation. The UN Biodiversity Summit in Kunming, China, the COP26 in Glasgow, the UN Food System Summit, the super year 2021. We, as an exponential species, we can act with speed, at scale. If we get this year right, this decade might see the fastest economic transition in history. Vidar, what makes you optimistic about the future? Or do you share this level of realistic optimism?
I do, certainly. And as you point to, there are many reasons to be kept up at night. But we're also now seeing an unprecedented confluence of pushes in the right direction. Firstly, we're seeing a growing recognition that we need to listen to science. We need to listen to science to understand the major and complex problems the planet is facing, and we need to listen to science and innovation to find the right solutions at scale and at speed. There is movement in financial markets. There is movement in industries, and there is movement in politics, as witnessed by the Biden summit last week. Now, that movement is not strong enough. We need to do what we can to give that movement further momentum. And I believe that this meeting, the competence, the commitment, the creativity going into this meeting will contribute to that much needed momentum for our planet and our future. Marsha, what makes you optimistic?
I think it's hard to be a scientist and not have a certain degree of optimism. Society has been in difficult situations before, and science has found a way to guide us through the problems. Science is the one tool we have that allows more people to live better lives without some people being put back and living worse lives. Examples include the Green Revolution, which allowed the same number of farmers tilling the same amount of land to feed more people. Now in the US, more people die from eating too much food than not having enough. When I was younger, I recall hearing doomsday projections about how the world was going to run out of copper and we wouldn't be able to transmit information any longer over telephones, etc. But then researchers perfected fiber optic cables. That not only improved the speed and bandwidth of communications, but they're more sustainable because fiber optics are made from glass, quartz, the second most common mineral on the planet. Or recall the ominous discovery of the hole in the ozone layer and concerns about increased rates of cancer and other dire warnings from the loss of this protective layer. Putting on a sound scientific basis Exactly why this protective layer was being eroded led to the political will and cooperation that phased out harmful chemicals. The Montreal Protocol stands as the most effective antidote to global warming that we have ever had. If leaders just listen to the science, we can address the current problems as well. Now to you, Johan.
Thanks, Marcia. Well, to round this off and to kick off our deliberations over the next 2 days, I think it's clear that science shows we must act, and we must act at scale. Science also shows we can, as pointed out by Marcia here. Science increasingly shows also that we win if we do. We have a chance for prosperous equity, peace in the future. And in the midst of the turbulence of the Anthropocene, we see clear signs of social transformations, as pointed out by Vidar. Sustainability as a path to a new modernity for humanity on Earth. This is what I would call evidence-based optimism. It requires realism and understanding of urgency. Above all, we need collective action, a sense of togetherness as collective alliances for change. We hope you'll find these days exploring scientific solutions and pathways to a safe and just future for all on Earth valuable and stimulating, because we need, more than ever, wide alliances for change. Never have we had so much evidence that we have to become planetary stewards so we can hand over a healthy and resilient planet to future generations. So off we go. Back to you, Christina.
Thank you so much, host committee, for that warm, inspiring, and informative welcome. It would be hard to imagine a conversation about climate change and the future of our planet that did not include Al Gore. In 2006, he woke up an entire generation to the dangerous impacts of climate change with his film, An Inconvenient Truth. And he was awarded the Nobel Peace Prize in 2007, along with the IPCC UN's panel of climate scientists, for his tireless efforts to press for bold and rapid action. 14 years later, his voice has not dimmed, and his reminders remain urgent. Ladies and gentlemen, Vice President Al Gore.
Thank you, Christiana, and thank you to our gracious hosts, Vidar Helgeson and the Nobel Foundation, Marcia McNutt and the National Academies of Sciences, and Johan Rockström and the Potsdam Institute for Climate Impact Research. It is, of course, an honor to be here in the company of so many esteemed scientists and leaders, and thank you for asking me to set the stage for a conversation about our planet, its health, its people, and its future, and to reflect on what we might learn from humanity's ongoing response to the coronavirus pandemic that has thus far killed more than 3 million people and sickened almost 150 million. First of all, this moment in which we gather is filled with abundant and, I believe, legitimate hope that we are right now crossing the long-awaited political tipping point on climate. I am more optimistic today than ever, not just because so many world leaders announced significant stretch goals last week to cut greenhouse gas emissions in half over the next 9 years, because after all, their work is in many ways just beginning, but their pledges have already set the direction of travel for government policies that will evolve this decade, and their new short-term goals will markedly increase the chance of actually reaching net zero emissions by mid-century. Alongside the world of politics and policy, the technology, business, and investment sectors have already leaped ahead. The stunning cost reduction curves for clean solar and wind electricity, for batteries, electric vehicles, and for hundreds of less well-known but nevertheless dramatic efficiency improvements are profoundly reshaping the world's capital stock. Last year, for example, 90% of all newly installed electricity generation worldwide was renewable, much of it coupled with battery storage that magnifies its advantages over dirty fossil fuels. In the decades ahead, the International Energy Agency projects that that percentage will rise to 95%. And many local, regional, and national jurisdictions are now mandating that renewables provide 100% of their power in the next few years or in the next decade. In many geographies, the ever-increasing advantages of clean energy, not to mention the co-benefits of clean energy and sharply reducing the particulate co-pollution that kills 9 million people every year and raises the death rate from COVID-19, these advantages are leading to the replacement and early retirement of existing coal and gas facilities that often have decades of useful lifetime remaining. So around the globe, the market is being transformed with dizzying speed. In 2014, just before the Paris Agreement was reached, solar and wind was cheaper than new coal and gas plants in only 1% of the world. Now, 6 years later, solar and wind are the cheapest sources of new electricity in more than 2/3 of the world, and in the next 5 years, they'll be cheaper in virtually all of the world. A report 10 days ago from the Climate Trace Coalition showed that replacing China's coal fleet with renewables faster could save the country $1.6 trillion over the next 20 years. Significantly, by the way, in just 2 months, Climate Trace, a global coalition of small AI-based technology companies and NGOs, will release a comprehensive report fused by AI from multiple satellite constellations and voluminous internet data streams that will identify every significant source of greenhouse gas emissions in the entire world, updated in nearly real time. The resulting new era of radical transparency will likely have a profound impact on the world's ability to hold polluters accountable to their governments, to investors, to their supply chain partners, to NGOs, and to the people of every nation. Similarly, electric cars and trucks will achieve price parity with internal combustion vehicles in key market sectors within the next 2 years, and in all model categories within 5 years. And again, many governments are speeding ahead to mandate 100% electric mobility by the end of this decade. The market value of Tesla now exceeds the value of ExxonMobil, Chevron, Shell, BP, and Eni combined. Regenerative agriculture, sustainable forestry and fishing, zero carbon buildings, green hydrogen, and a circular economy are all gaining momentum and are now clearly in prospect in the years and decades ahead. We are living in the early stages of a sustainability revolution, empowered by machine learning, artificial intelligence, the Internet of Things, and the biotechnology revolution, and it has the magnitude of the Industrial Revolution coupled with the speed of the digital revolution. And it is, many believe, the largest business opportunity in the history of the world. Many investors are taking note. ESG investing is becoming mainstream, though greenwashing is a persistent issue. Some have decided to provide meaningful leadership by setting their own stretch goals. The new Net Zero Asset Managers Alliance, including pension funds, foundations, active managers, and the largest passive managers like BlackRock and Vanguard, have now committed that their entire portfolios, containing $37 trillion, will become net zero by 2050. Moreover, people throughout the world, especially the rising younger generation, are insistently demanding that solutions to the climate crisis be implemented even faster. In my country, for example, 70% of Americans strongly support President Biden's bold whole-of-government plan to address the crisis, and that includes a solid majority of those in the opposition party. Now, our journey ahead will, of course, be difficult. Each day, we're still spewing 162 million tons of man-made global warming pollution into the atmosphere as if it were an open sewer. And in order to limit global temperature rise to the aspirational goal set out in the landmark Paris Agreement of 1.5 degrees Celsius, greenhouse gas emissions will need to fall by 7.5% every year for the next decade. But market forces are now powering this transition forward, and I believe inexorably. The opportunity to create tens of millions of new jobs is also becoming irresistible. One positive sign in my country, the Coal Miners Union just publicly endorsed President Biden's plan to phase out coal. Moreover, a study from the Oxford Review of Economic Policy, which includes the Nobel Prize-winning economist Joe Stiglitz as a co-author, shows that green stimulus measures have both short and long-term job creation and economic advantages over traditional stimulus measures. In fact, green investments generate almost 3 times as many jobs as fossil fuel investments, dollar for dollar. In the U.S., solar jobs have been growing 5 times faster than average job growth, and the fastest growing job of all is wind turbine technician. So as we embark on this historic transition, what can we learn from the awful pandemic we're still struggling to overcome? Has it had any effect on our thinking about the climate crisis? I think it has. First, it has been a powerful lesson for everyone that when the world's leading scientists raise their voices in unison to issue dire warnings about a deadly threat to our world, it's wise to listen and respond. We now realize we should have listened to the virologists and epidemiologists that tried to get us to mobilize preparations and safeguards against a pandemic almost exactly like the one that did indeed come. And most came to see and hear the persistent and even louder warnings from climate scientists with fresh eyes and fresh ears. Moreover, the burning of fossil fuels causes all kinds of other problems that must also be addressed. I think another effect of the pandemic is that it also became easier to stretch our moral imagination in order to understand that our interconnected world really can be suddenly knocked off kilter and disrupt our lives profoundly if we do not pay attention to the scientists who are trying to protect our civilization. We also learned that the impressive advances in science and technology have given us new tools to use in responding to global threats. The astonishing speed with which new vaccines have been developed and deployed has been incredible, and the same is true for the newly available solutions to the climate crisis. However, we've also learned the deadly dangers of the growing inequalities and inequities in our world. As the science fiction writer William Gibson once wrote, "The future is here, it's just not evenly distributed." It is scandalous that vaccines are in such short supply in so many low-income developing nations, and it is dangerous to the wealthy countries as well. Like the climate crisis, the pandemic is a global threat and must be addressed urgently in all nations. The fast-rising impacts of the climate crisis are, of course, harsher in low-income nations and in communities of color, even as the resources needed to adapt and respond are in shorter supply. And like the pandemic, their suffering will have impacts on the wealthy nations as well. Indeed, we are already seeing the flows of climate refugees awaken xenophobia in some of the developed nations to which they're migrating in growing numbers. The Lancet Commission tells us that as many as 1 billion may cross borders in search of safety throughout this century. Tragically, there's already evidence in some wealthy nations that this has contributed to the rise of populist authoritarianism. So there are many reasons to accelerate our pace in implementing this great transition to a sustainable future. May I also add, we should reject the utterly insane and morally hazardous counsel of those who are funding efforts to block the sun's rays from reaching the earth by making our blue skies white and taking away our children's ability to see the stars. We have the solutions we need, and we are gaining the political will to implement them in time. Moreover, the new scientific findings give us new hope for the speed with which we can halt global warming if we act. When we reach net zero, it will take only 30 years after that fact before half of the CO2 presently in the atmosphere falls out. Some will say, yes, some of the CO2 will linger there for many centuries, some for 1 or 2 millennia. They will see the sky as half full of CO2. Many of us will see it at that point as half empty. And the new scientific findings tell us that in as little as 3 to 5 years after we stop adding to the CO2, the temperatures will stop going up. For those who doubt that we as human beings have the inherent ability to take these facts on board, to fight our way through the epistemological crisis and find the meaning that is available, the truth that can empower us. I will say, as I have said before, the will to act is itself a renewable resource. Thank you.
Mr. Gore, thank you so much for that. So let's talk about the other elephant in the room, biodiversity. Climate change and life on Earth are absolutely inseparable. And I am so thrilled to welcome two pioneers. Thomas Lovejoy coined the term biological diversity. And in 2019, Sandra Diaz co-led the largest scientific assessment ever on the state of biodiversity and ecosystems on Earth. These two have literally changed how we think about life on our planet. We're not just losing species, we're losing habitats and ecosystems, one after the other after the other. So Thomas and Sandra will talk about the value of life on Earth and how we can preserve it. I really look forward to this conversation, so please welcome me and please welcome Sandra and Tom.
Great. Great. Thank you. So it's such a delight to actually have Sandra as part of this brief attention to biological diversity in this program because she has done such extraordinary things on behalf of life on Earth. So when you add up the incredible variety of life on Earth, which collectively we call biodiversity, all those species add up to a living fabric. We tend to think of them individually to the extent we think of them at all, but taken together, they drive great global cycles of carbon and nitrogen. For example, to take one, the carbon cycle and climate change is an incredibly important one. Climate change is really a biological problem. Burning fossil fuels is releasing the energy of ancient photosynthesis in a geological instant. And in addition, we have destroyed so much terrestrial nature that there is as much carbon from destroyed nature in the atmosphere as survives in current ecosystems. A good ending to climate change will require bringing a significant portion of that back through ecosystem restoration. We exist on a living planet, which works as a linked biological and physical system. For a satisfactory outcome, that means actually we need to manage ourselves.
Indeed, Tom. People often ask me, how do I rate the biodiversity crisis as compared to the climate change crisis and the poverty and inequality crisis? And I think people make this question because they see biodiversity as the animals and plants out there are quite separate from us. But science tells us that living nature is much more than an inventory of species. Living nature is, as you say, the fabric of life, the living fabric of the planet, the intricate tapestry in which all the living, including us humans, are interwoven. And this living fabric is essential to the functioning of the planet and to human well-being. Unfortunately, we have now incontestable evidence that the living fabric of the earth is being unraveled fast. And the ultimate reason why this is happening is the present dominant model of appropriating nature, doing business, and relating to each other. So, runaway climate change, massive biodiversity loss, and intolerable social and environmental inequalities among people are simply the three most serious symptoms of the same root problem. Therefore, there cannot be an appropriate solution for these three existential challenges without tackling them together in a coordinated way and without realizing that the living fabric of the earth is at the core of the three challenges.
Thank you, Sandra. So I have had the joy of working in the Amazon rainforests since 1965 on science, but also trying to protect it. One of the fascinating things shown in the current slide was discovered in the 1970s, that the Amazon makes half of its own rainfall in a major cycle that provides moisture to every country in South America except Argentina. Weather moves east to west across the Amazon, and the rain that falls evaporates off the complex surfaces and in addition is transpired through the leaves. It recycles more than 6 times, crossing the basin. We are now at a tipping point where there will be insufficient rainfall to support rainforests in the southern and eastern Amazon, and it will convert to savanna vegetation, with multiple consequences, including less moisture for central Brazilian agriculture. It would lead to massive biodiversity loss, serious impacts for the people now living there. Deforestation has to stop right away and be accompanied by reforestation to build back a margin of safety. In other words, to back away from the tipping point. If we take care of Amazon biodiversity, it will take care of us.
I think this is a brilliant illustration of a distant connection, what we like to call a telecoupling, a distant connection between ecosystems far apart from each other. And the world is indeed full of these natural telecouplings, and we want to make sure we don't disrupt them, because once disrupted, we don't have much of a clue how to restart them. Now, I would love to add a second image, if I can have the second slide, which complements your point, Tom, and also is directly relevant to the main theme of this conversation, which is the local versus the global. This is a map, is a global map of human-made teleconnections. This is just air traffic before the pandemics. It doesn't include other really important teleconnections such as shipping lanes or roads. What this image illustrates is that we have drastically exacerbated telecoupling with our global exchanges of goods, waste, information, organisms, and people. And all these global exchanges deeply involve the living fabric of the earth, either because they take materials from it, or they dump waste into it, or because the transport itself is through the bodies of living organisms, all the way from microbes to traded plants and animals to people constantly traveling between regions and continents. This is why I think today nobody on Earth is fully local. Because of these global connections, we are never fully local. In two senses. First, because we are all the time receiving influences originated in processes at very distant places. And second, because what we choose to eat, buy, burn, support, or ignore every day has impacts. It has impacts on remote ecosystems and on remote peoples, despite the fact that we will probably never see them in person. That is why I think that the classic slogan, think globally, act locally, has become a bit outdated. We do need to think locally as well as globally, and we do need to act globally, or at least as broadly as we can, as well as locally. Looking after our beautiful backyard tree and compost heap is, of course, a nice thing to do, but it's definitely going to fall way, way short. We do need collective action, and we do need coordination.
Thank you for that great presentation of telecouplings. No better measure of our impact on the world. We also need to appreciate that every species, plant, animal, and microbe, represents a close to 4 billion year evolutionary lineage, which in itself should be respected. All these species constitute a gigantic library of the life sciences. Each one represents a set of solutions to a set of biological challenges and opportunities. And any one of those has the potential to transform the life sciences, like the vaccinia virus led to vaccination, or the fear de loss led to ACE inhibitors, which hundreds of millions of people take for high blood pressure. Driving species to extinction is like book burning, total folly. We should revel in the variety of life on Earth. And of course, collectively, they provide ecosystem services like soil fertility, protection of coasts from storm surge, or watershed functions like pollination. Insects in New York State provide trillions of pollinations to fruit trees every year. These need to be treated as assets and kept track of in national accounts.
Yes, we know now that most of the vital contributions of nature to people have been declining worldwide over the past 50 years. And we also know there's no satisfactory substitute for most of them. So we simply cannot keep going like this. And in this, maybe we need to keep in mind three facts. First, vast majority of people actually enjoy a thriving connection with the rest of the living. Second, the living fabric of Earth can be kept in place, is physically feasible. And not only that, if we look at the numbers, it's also affordable, much more affordable than the cost of inaction. So I would say, let's not allow our common future be stolen from us. Let's defend our future. Let's fight for it. Let's create it. And in moving towards this better future, we once again stumble across the question of the global versus the local. I personally think that we need to act urgently in the shape of practical measures locally at the points in which the physical impact is felt. But that is not enough. We also need to make fundamental changes at another level, at the level of the social, economic, governance and institutional factors, at the level of the social narratives we keep telling each other about what a good life entails, because it is all these factors that are the root causes, the underlying propellers of all the physical impacts we see worldwide. Of course, they are much more difficult to tackle, but it's indispensable towards this vision of a better future for all. And let me tell you, Tom, that is for me a great privilege to have shared this space with you. You are the mentor of all of us working on biodiversity.
Wow. Delight to do it with you, Sandra.
Sandra and Tom, that was both eye-opening and inspiring. Thank you so much for that. What did you all think? Share your thoughts with us, and don't forget to hashtag us at hashtag Nobel Prize Summit. And we really mean that. We want to hear from you. Okay, so next up, we have a special musical performance. Please welcome to our summit, musical weirdo and visionary artist B.D. Wolf, who will be introduced by Nobel Prize laureate Robert Woodrow Wilson, who was awarded the Physics Prize in 1978. Take it away, Robert.
Hello, I'm Robert Wilson, and I'm delighted to be here at the first Nobel Prize Summit. Arno Penzias and I were awarded the Nobel Prize in Physics in 1978 for discovering cosmic microwave background radiation using the large Holmdel horn reflector antenna, which you see behind me. This antenna was built by Bell Laboratories for use with the ECHO satellite. In 1960, JPL broadcast President Eisenhower's voice from California. It bounced off the ECHO balloon, was received by this antenna, and transmitted out to the world as the first use of a communication satellite. Later, Arno and I used this as a unique radio telescope for several years. I came to know artist and innovator B.D. Wolf when she was doing a collaborative project at Bell Laboratories that resulted in her Raw Space album. We first met right here in front of the antenna. That meeting resulted in the fun experiment of transmitting her album into space. The antenna was designed and used originally as a receiver, but antennas work perfectly well both directions. So we hooked a transmitter to it, and we transmitted raw space out into raw space. So it's with great pleasure that I introduce my friend and fellow explorer, B.D. Wolf.
Oh, Bob, thank you so much. It's such a pleasure to be introduced by you, and so wonderful to see the horn antenna and think of that experiment together. Thank you to everyone who is joining us from all over the world, tuning into this incredible summit, which I am just so honored to be a part of. My name is B.T. Wolf. I'm an artist, and I create new tangible formats for music in the digital age, which have ceremony, tangibility, and storytelling at their core. But zooming way out, really my work is just about reminding people of the value of art for our humanity, and also the value of nature. Both art and nature are core to our humanity, our sensibility, keeping us alive inside. And this next project called From Green to Red really encapsulates this. So in just a few moments, I'm going to show you the trailer for this project, which is an environmental protest piece built using 800,000 years of historic data, specifically atmospheric CO2 levels, to give everyone a sense of where we are right now. The idea behind creating this project was really to take data, which is often cold and unrelatable, and using the power of art, make it something that everyone can absorb. And this piece is simultaneously a protest song and a reimagining of the music video format. So that song, From Green to Red, I actually wrote way back in 2006 after seeing An Inconvenient Truth, and it just completely shook me awake. So I do have to say thank you so much, Al, for your monumental work in raising our awareness, and of course, Sir David. After we take a look at this trailer for this next project, which will be installed at the London Design Biennale in June at Somerset House, I'm going to close with a live song, a track called Oh My Heart, which I wrote a couple of years ago. But actually listening to the lyrics today, it really could describe the past year that we've all been going through. So with infinite love and gratitude, and thank you all once again. My name is Beatty, and this is From Green to Red.
Outside the people like cars are still running, when inside it's safe to deny that it's coming. The TV's turned up so the winds are just humming to the sound of the heat rising. We don't want to hear that the problem is us, so we live like we want in our own universe. 'Cause man thinks he's God in a devilish way. We're too proud to see what we won't even say. We don't wanna know, don't wanna know, don't wanna know, don't wanna know. No, we don't wanna know, don't wanna know, don't wanna know, don't wanna know. So take my hand, babe, and I'll walk you to school, where you'll learn how to live by a new set of rules. 'Cause we played all our cards, but none left for you. Forgive us, my dear, can't you see? It's the truth that we don't wanna know, don't wanna know, don't wanna know, don't wanna know. No, we don't wanna know, don't wanna know, don't wanna know, don't wanna know. What happened to love? Is it out of date? Turn back, there's so much here to say. What happened to love? Is it out of date? Turn back, there's so much here to say. Turn back.
Hi, I'm BT Wolf, and it's so wonderful to be here for this incredible summit. And this song is called Oh My Heart.
So my heart, there's a sickness in this world, keeps on spreading through the land and sea. And though I know there's something in this world we must be learning, it's almost killing me. Just hold your heart, my darling. Hold your heart, my darling. Hold your heart, my darling, now. So my heart, there's a hatred in this world, keeps on growing. Through the lies we speak, and though I know the truth has never been so disturbing, it's almost killing me. So hold your heart, my darling. Hold your heart, my darling. Hold your heart, my darling, now. As if the shadow falls forever, I will rest with you. And though there's nothing sure about it, peace will take us through. A ragged heart, this desperate world needs your love more than ever. There's no time to spare. With every day we're recording our demise like a ledger, till there's no more to share. Hold your heart, my darling, and hold your heart, my darling. And hold your heart, my darling, now. As if the shadow falls forever, I will rest with you. And though there's nothing sure about it, peace will take us through. 'Cause if the shadow falls forever, I will rest with you. And though there's nothing sure about it, peace will take us through.
Thank you so much.
Wow, that performance gave me chills. Thank you so much, Beatty Wolf, for that. And just a note to our audience, we're so sorry we had a technical difficulty at the roundtables, but we are all set and we should be good to go, so please visit them when you're ready. Okay, so at the top of the session, I told you that I am here to be your guide. So this next bit, which we're calling Dynamic Dialogues, might take a tad bit of guiding, but it's not hard, I promise. And we want you to know what to expect, because this is where you get to choose your own adventure. In the next hour, we have 4 dynamic talks followed by 4 interactive dialogues. Each of these speakers will address one of the main themes of the summit. Nobel laureate Marty Chalfie talking on human rights, Gary Hoover talking about inequality in economics, Bridget Baptiste talking about Earth systems, and Nobel laureate Stanley Whittingham talking about technology. They will be joined on screen by 3 provocateurs to drive the conversation, after which you'll have a chance to pick a breakout room where you can spend the time with the expert of your choice to ask your very own questions. I know it sounds a bit complicated, but we got this, and you definitely don't need a Nobel Prize to do it. It's fast, it's fun, and our host, Ahmed Best, is going to make this awesome for all of you because he is the best. All right, Ahmed, I am handing this over to you. Have fun, and I will see you on the other side.
Thank you so much, Christiana. It's a pleasure to be with you all. Welcome. I am so incredibly excited to be here and share this with all of you. My name is Ahmed Best. I am a senior fellow at the Annenberg School of Communications and Journalism at USC. I'm also an adjunct lecturer at the School of Dramatic Arts at the University of Southern California as well. I'm an actor, I'm a writer, I'm a director, and I'm the host of an event with the Science and Entertainment Exchange called Science Speed Dating. And Dynamic Dialogues today is going to be a lot of that. You are going to talk with some really incredible scientists, and we're going to have really incredible providers asking them questions, and then you'll be able to go to a breakout room and ask them questions as well through a chat. Really excited to get this started. I'm going to stop talking now because I really want to get to our first dialogue. And our first dialogue is going to be with Marty Chalfie, and he is going to be talking about science as a human right. If we can have our provocateurs as well as our speaker on screen. Good morning, everyone. How are you? It's morning where I am. I hope you have had a good morning or you are having a good morning. It's a pleasure to see you all. I'm very excited for this. Marty, I'm super excited for your conversation. So if we can have 7 minutes on the screen, please. Each talk is going to be 7 minutes long. Each talk back with our provocateurs is going to be 7 minutes. So it's going to be 14 minutes of mind-blowing science and questions and curiosity. So without further ado, Marty, your 7 minutes starts right now.
Wonderful. Thank you, Ahmed, and hello to everybody. I want to start by talking about the work of the Committee on Human Rights, which I chair at the National Academy. We advocate for scientists, engineers, and health professionals anywhere in the world who've suffered major abuses of their human rights, meaning unlawful arrest, arbitrary detention, sometimes even attacks. We also provide assistance to these individuals and their families, establish resources on information about science and human rights, and convene events to raise awareness of issues at the intersection of science and human rights. And I invite all of our listeners to go to our website, nationalacademies.org/human rights, for more information about these activities and many other resources. And I want to particularly draw your attention to a photo exhibit that we've put together as part of this Nobel Prize Summit, entitled Advancing Rights and Freedoms, Science, Human Dignity, and the Nobel Prize. This highlights various ways in which Nobel Prize winning scientists have worked to protect and promote human rights. Now, some of the people we work on behalf of have been arrested, incarcerated, or harassed for their professional work. This includes Yevgeny Betishko, a Russian geologist, who was arrested and convicted without credible evidence after documenting the illegal construction in the Western Caucasus National Park connected with the preparation for the 2014 Sochi Olympics. And there have been several engineers, scientists, and other educators in Iran who were arrested and imprisoned simply because they taught college courses in people's living rooms to Baha'i students who had been prevented from attending university. And finally, as my final example of this, are medical professionals in many countries, unfortunately, even including the United States, who were attacked, and in some cases arrested by police or military authorities for giving medical assistance to injured protesters. Unfortunately, just doing one's job can put one at risk. We also advocate for scientists, engineers, and health professionals who've suffered human rights abuses because they've simply spoken out against injustices. These include Professor Muntasir Ibrahim, a geneticist who was arrested for his efforts to promote a peaceful resolution to conflict in Sudan, the entire governing board of the Turkish Medical Association, who were arrested after issuing a statement opposing the incursion of the Turkish government into Syria, and Dr. Denis Mukwege from the Democratic Republic of the Congo, who was harassed and the subject of an assassination attempt for his work to end the use of rape and other forms of sexual violence as tools of war, work that actually led to his sharing the 2018 Nobel Prize in Peace. I'd like to talk actually now a little more generally about this idea of science and human rights. This was first enumerated as a human right, the human right to science, in Article 27 of the Universal Declaration of Human Rights in 1948, which said that everyone has the right to share in scientific achievement and its benefits. It was further elaborated in 1966 in an International Covenant on Economic, Social, and Cultural Rights, which obliges states to respect the freedom indispensable for scientific research and to take necessary steps for the conservation, development, and diffusion of science. 1 year ago, the United Nations Committee on Economic, Social, and Cultural Rights published a document which provides further guidance on this right and describes ways of measuring and monitoring the implementation of the right to science. In particular, this document says that scientific progress and its applications should be accessible for all persons without discrimination. This access is not only to the fruits of science, but also to participation in science. The document speaks of 3 benefits of science: the material results of applications of scientific discoveries, the science knowledge and information itself, and interesting, the role that science plays in forming a critical and responsible group of citizens. It also asserts that states should prioritize scientific and technological innovations that serve especially the needs of persons living in poverty and ensure that these people have access to the technological innovations. We're actually seeing now a major test of these ideals with respect to the worldwide access to vaccines during this COVID-19 pandemic. But scientific progress also brings new challenges and new human rights questions. I'm proud to say that, contrary to what we see in many science fiction movies, scientists are often among the most vocal in calling attention to the human rights and ethical issues arising out of new discoveries and technology. Take, for example, the Union of Concerned Scientists on Atomic Weapons, the Nobel laureate Jennifer Doudna on gene editing, and the many computer scientists on the implications for personal security and privacy that arise from digital technologies. Most recently, my colleague Rafa Yusti here at Columbia University with Sarah Goring and others has urged the world to consider how human rights may have to be expanded in the face of advances in our knowledge of the neurosciences.
1 minute.
Rafa has enumerated 5 new rights, which he calls neuro rights. These are the rights to personal identity, free will, mental privacy, equal access to mental augmentation, and to the protection from algorithmic bias. I want to end by pointing out something from a book I recently read, which I liked very much, a novel, The Ministry for the Future, by the science fiction author Kim Stanley Robinson. In it, he reiterates rights described in the 1966 International Covenant, describes these rights as the 7 public necessities that are human rights, specifically the rights to food, water, clothing, shelter, electricity, healthcare, and education. Science and technology hold enormous promise to help ensure that these rights are enjoyed by all and to make the world more equitable. But we must make sure that all are given these rights. And because science and technology touch all aspects of our lives, I hope that the scientific and human rights communities can continue to collaborate and even do so more in the future to determine how best to implement these rights and how to expand human rights in the face of new scientific developments. Thank you.
Thank you, Marty, so much. That was fantastic. Science as a human right is such an important thing to be talking about, especially right now. I want to get our provocateurs in on this because I'm sure they have some questions. We have 7 minutes for a provocateur conversation. So who wants to go first? Is it Connie, Gottwald, or Ginger? Welcome. Please feel free to either raise a hand or shout something out and ask a question about science is a human right. Connie, please go for it.
I'll go, Ahmed. Thank you so much, Marty. Fascinating talk. Thank you so much. As you were speaking, the thought occurred to me that while science should indeed be a human right and the benefits of science should be a human right, I wondered if sometimes the advancement of science goes against some of the rights of people, some of the human rights, or threatens the human rights of people, what would you say to that? I'm calling in from Kampala.
Good question. Can science education be a danger? Can science as a human right be a danger to the humans they are supposed to help?
So people can use all sorts of things inappropriately against other people. There's no question about that. I don't think there's anything specific to science to that I don't think that science is inherently an evil thing or something that goes against human rights. It's certainly something that people can use against it, and this is why we need laws and respect for human rights and how science is used. But the knowledge itself, I don't believe, is intrinsically something that is dangerous. It's how people use things, but it's how they use anything. You can use a brick to build a building, or you can use a brick to hit somebody. So it's a
fantastic point.
The brick.
Ginger, let's get you guys in the conversation as well. Ginger. I saw Ginger's hand up first.
Go ahead, Gatwa.
Ladies first.
Sure. Go ahead, Ginger.
Go ahead, Ginger, please.
So Marty, you were mentioning specifically human rights in relation to the COVID vaccine or even water, and we're seeing what's happening in India right now with the devastation. We saw what happened in tribal communities in America. How do we implement human rights into that when you see the poorest communities getting decimated by things like this?
So this general comment that was made in the UN a year ago actually goes into many of these questions, and it tries to address this, specifically saying that governments should look at their laws to eliminate, for example, any law, policy, or practice, prejudice, or stereotype that undermines